top 10 list for today, and it's because everybody loves an affordable car. Notice I didn't say cheap, except I just said cheap. Darn. Affordable used car. Now, I got this list from Kelley Blue Book, or KBB.com as it's known now. And so this is a top 10 list of cars under $5,000. And I think this was current as of April 2020. So it is a bit outdated, I apologize. But I still think it's a really good list. Oddly enough, all of these cars have probably gone up in value, so maybe this is the top 10 cars under $7,000 or whatever. But I suppose depending upon mileage, you might be able to score these. Also depending upon where you live. Like in LA, it's not going to happen. Maybe. So here we go, number 10. And this comes as no surprise. Well, it kind of does, because this car is often forgotten. It's the 2007 Pontiac Vibe. Remember that car? It's basically a Toyota Matrix, made by Toyota. And it's got a Pontiac badge on it. Home run, absolutely. You get like Corolla guts in a Pontiac. Plus, it's a collector car now. It's only going to go up in value, right? Probably not. Number 9 on the list, and another brand that seems to just always end up on these lists, is the 2008 Mazda 3. Again, not a big surprise there. I remember the Mazda of that generation had, some great success. They were a little smaller back in the day, so if you're a larger fellow or gal, you might want to see how you fit in one of those. The seat may not provide enough kind of real estate side to side, and you may not have room for your long legs. But you never know. I mean, it might be super comfy. I was chatting with a work friend just yesterday, and I'm 6'2", 6'3". He's like 6'6". He's a big fella. And he said his favorite car was a Mitsubishi Eclipse. I drove one of those and I could not fit in it. And I'm still just like, my head hurts thinking about how he was able to own that car and enjoy it. But, everyone has their own definition of comfort. So, if maybe it works great for him. I mean, it obviously did. He wouldn't be lying about that. So just make sure it fits you. That's all I'm saying. Number 8 on the list. This is one of my most favorite boring cars. It's the 2004 Lexus ES. So I think back then it was like a 330. And really, folks, if you're looking for an affordable used car, get a Lexus ES of any year. You'll be good. The older ones were smaller, so in the 90s those were smaller, but the build quality was just like otherworldly with those cars. Really, 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 really good. And really boring. And I know somebody's going to complain and say, oh, that's not true. I had one and it was really fun to drive. Cool. But if I agreed with you, we'd both be wrong. Sorry. I think I got a little extra sleep, so I'm a little extra spicy. But I love that car, so please don't take offense at that. It was not intended to be fun. And in 04, that was kind of the larger, more kind of bulbous, whale-looking ES. Some would say ugly. I just say terrifically boring. I would love to just float around the freeway in that car. I'm sure it would be totally boring, and I would love it. I like boring. You figured that out. Number 7 on the list. No surprise, 2008 Scion Xb. And I'm trying to remember what the XB looks like. Is that the little box, or is the XB the little like coupe? Either way, who cares? It's a Toyota. Buy it. You'll be fine. Check for oil leaks. I think some of those had an issue with like rings. The Scions were not totally immune from issues. So do your due diligence. Check all the websites. Like I always like looking at Edmunds.com when I'm looking for a used car, because oftentimes Edmunds will have reviews from like real people. It's almost like the Yelp of used cars. People will say, oh yeah, I loved my car, but then after 35,000 miles, I started hearing a grinding noise, and then one day the car just stopped. Stuff like that. And then you'll see somebody else saying, oh, that happened to me at 26,000 miles. So it is really nice. And it can save you a headache. Like, I was really hot and heavy about the LS 460 for a while. I was just sure that I was going to buy one. And I read enough LS 460 reviews on Edmunds that I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I want this, in fact. Because, like, the idea of owning a car versus, like, the reality of owning a car are two different things often. When a window regulator fails in that car and it costs $1,200, versus another car where it would cost $300, it's just stuff like that. So do your due diligence, check on Edmunds. Number 6, the 2011, and this car just ends up on every top 10 list, and I think I need to spend some extended time with one of these, because I must be missing something, but these cars just seem to be the new cockroaches. They're everywhere. The 2011 Kia Soul must be a home run. And you know what? I'm sure they are. I remember one of my neighbors had one. He loved it. He was like a guitar player, drummer, whatever. And he would haul his gear around, and he really liked it. So get you a Soul. Why not? For $5,000, do it. Number 5 on the list. The original cockroach of the road. The 2008 Honda Civic. Credit where credit's due. It's a good little car. I can't remember if this was the age of transmission trouble for Honda, although I think it's kind of always been the age of transmission trouble for Honda. So, again, do your due diligence on that, but, there's a reason why everyone has a Civic, and there's a reason why they're still running after all these years. So, get you a Civic. You know what I mean? Number 4 on the list. Another, like the cockroach's cousin cockroach. The 2006 Toyota Corolla. Get a Corolla. You won't be sorry. It's a good car. This particular generation, very good car, very reliable. A couple things to consider. Not very comfortable, I gotta say. The seats, not good for a taller build. Lots of wind noise. Just not a lot of creature comforts. So if you're just looking for a car to just get you where you need to be, couldn't recommend it more. If you're looking for something that you want to just sit back and go, oh, not this car, not the Corolla, okay? And probably not the Civic of that era. Drive them, read about them. Good gas mileage, good reliability, much respect to both of those cars. The other thing that's nice about that generation of Corolla, cheap parts. I mean, you can get all kinds of stuff dirt cheap. Like, I know for a fact you can get a side mirror for $30. Like the whole assembly. You're not going to be looking at a perfect factory fit, but dude, for $30, man, that's great. Anyway, and number 3, the cockroach's bigger brother, the 2006 Honda Accord. I really like this era of Accord. Nice car. The V6 had a lot of power, as I recall. 4-cylinder had a good amount of power. 4-cylinder is going to get better gas mileage, of course. But I really like that 6. It's got some punch to it. And if you get one that's like fully loaded, it's a fairly luxurious car. I like that car. So you could certainly do a lot worse than the 06 Accord. Number 2 on the list, again, no surprise. And the thing that's funny to me is that like, it doesn't matter what list we're doing. If we're doing top 10 cars under 25,000, this car is going to be on there. Top 10 cars under 15,000. I mean, pretty much any price, like under $30,000, and you're going to find, maybe 35, you're going to find this same lineup on these lists. The 2006 at number 2, 2006 Toyota Camry. Get a Camry. Any year. Any price. Really good car. This particular generation, 06, not a very exciting car. Not a very attractive car. It's not ugly. It's just not... I mean, at this price point, you're probably not looking for excitement in your life, so you're just looking for a car. And this is a good car. You just want car. So, 06 Camry, home run. Go do it. If you're on the fence, go do it. Number 1. And I was happy to see this one on the list. This warmed, it's warmed my cold heart. I was so delighted. It's one of my original Toyota crushes before I decided to get a Lexus. And it's the car that we've all lived with, and you'll never even notice it, you know? And like, that's what rodents do. They hide, they make sure you don't notice. Really good at just hiding. So, number 1 on the list, I love this car. 2005 Toyota Avalon, ladies and gentlemen. Give it up. What a great car. This particular generation, 2005, it just looks kind of like an overgrown Camry. It's just kind of like a Camry that should probably cut out carbs. You know, it's just a little kind of bloated. It's just a little enlarged. The interior, at the time when they came out, they looked super futuristic because they had this little plastic cover that would cover all of like the climate control and the radio and stuff. And then some of them had like a little nav screen, and I think you could cover that too. And it had all kinds of buttons, just lots of plastic buttons. So, you know, it was still kind of it was like a nod to the 80s where every car maker, if they put a bunch of buttons in, it must be like a really luxurious car. And I miss those days. I miss all the buttons, you know, they were so cool. And so this was definitely a throwback to that time. And I guess it was kind of a sign of the times. If you look at the BMW 7 Series of that era, 2005, 2004, that was the Bangle Butt car. I think it was Chris Bangle that designed those. And my friend had one of those Bangle Butt 7 Series, which personally I love. I like the way those look. I think they're beautiful from every angle, even the back. It's just my opinion. But that car, I remember my friend called me one day and said, yeah, my car has, 175 buttons or something. Like, he sat down and counted every button. The buttons had buttons. It was amazing. And I'm the kind of guy that enjoys that sort of thing. I mean, like, yeah, let's overly complicate it just so we can have extra buttons. I'm all about it. Like, it just, it takes me back to like 1985 when, everyone was going to be an astronaut, and there were buttons and switches and gauges and lights and bleep bloops everywhere. It was just terrific. So the Avalon kind of has a little bit of that, not to that extreme, but it does have it. And it just makes me giggle looking at it now, all these years later, 16 years later. But man, what a great car. Plenty of room, big, luxurious seats that just kind of, you go, ugh. Really good for larger fellas. A friend of mine had one of these, passed away this last year, but I remember I used to ride with him in his car. I mean, it was dreadfully boring. But like, he was a large guy, he probably weighed I mean, I don't know what he weighed. Probably close to 4 bills. Pretty tall guy too. Like, he didn't really fit in my Lexus LS 400. Like, he had a hard time getting through the door opening. But his Avalon, he had no problem. He could get in and out, with a good amount of ease. The seats were wide and supportive, and the steering wheel was adjustable. I mean, it was just a really good car. And like, he had 260,000 miles at the time. And this car was not perfect by any means, but, it was very reliable. It had several oil leaks, power steering leaks, stuff like that, but, really nothing major. If you think about a car that has a leak versus a car that burns stuff, it's very different, very different. So I can tell you from personal experience, really, really fine car, really boring, but it's quiet, it's comfortable, and you can just kind of set your cruise control and float on down the road, and pretty soon you're there. It's great, and they're not very expensive. Oftentimes I will see like teenagers driving these cars, and it just kind of cracks me up. I just think, like, I saw some girl with like pink and purple hair driving one a couple weeks ago, and I was thinking, it's just not what you expect to see. But now that they're so affordable, it's not a surprise to see younger drivers in them. And also the fact, like I was talking about earlier, they are very discreet cars. So, like, you could have 10 Camrys and an Avalon, and you wouldn't notice the Avalon. And so people, I don't think, are really searching for them because they never think of it. And when they were new, there was a considerable price premium over the Camry. So, if you're like me, you probably would have looked at it and said, oh, I can't afford that, or that's an old person's car, or whatever. But all these years later, it's kind of like, well, the Camry is an old person's car, I guess. There's really, you don't buy a Camry because it's exciting. Maybe the new ones, but, certainly not back then. And you're not going to buy an Avalon because it's exciting. So if you're just looking for an affordable car that's super reliable and happens to be comfortable and maybe a little luxurious, get an Avalon. I remember my uncle had I think he had a 98 Avalon, and he let me borrow it once. I think it had something like 380,000 miles at the time. And I kind of did a double take when I looked at the odometer. I thought, no, that couldn't be, not this. This car runs really well. I grew up with American cars, and, they died long before that. So I can tell you also, a late 90s Avalon, they're not very fancy, but man, they are. Those cars are tough, dude. Tough. I'm sorry to spend so much time blabbering about this car, but I just love the Avalon. I don't know if I'll ever own one, but I'm just one of those, fans standing by, and they're just great. They're great. I can't say enough good things. Also, of that late 90s era, I was just thinking, the other really good cars that they were making, I'm talking 96 to 99, that era. The RAV4, not very exciting, but really well built. Obviously the Avalon, the Camry, the Corolla. They were pretty small back then, but they run forever. Any of those 90s Toyotas, they're amazing cars. Amazing cars. They're just not very fun. I never liked them. I always hated them. I thought, why would anybody drive one of these? But here we are in 2021, and those cars are still on the road. So, who's laughing now? I would rock one of those. So in any case, folks, I guess that wraps it up. And it looks like I'm coming up behind an Avalon. More importantly is the 87 Monte Carlo SS right there. But who cares about that? There's an Avalon up front. Looks like an 02, maybe an 03. What a fine car. The Monte Carlo, that's pretty neat. What do you call that, a B-body? Somebody help me out. I forget. But I think those Monte Carlos, from the 80s. I seem to recall that being a B-body chassis. I don't know why that's sticking out in my head. The other car that it shared that platform with, I believe, was the Olds Cutlass. And those were really neat. And also, the Pontiac, was it the Bonneville? There was a Pontiac as well. See, the Monte Carlo, the Bonneville, and what did I just say? The Bonneville, the Monte Carlo, and the... Oh, it's embarrassing. I literally just said it. I'm just feeling the pressure, y'all. I got to deliver for you, and I'm nervous. I'm sorry. I'm just going to have to rewatch the footage. But anyway, somebody educated me on the B-body stuff. I forgot. They used to be a big deal. The Buick Grand National, that was one legendary with the 3.8 liter turbo. And that car was hurting some feelings at the drag strip. I think that was doing something like a 13.1, 13.5 quarter mile, which in the 80s was like insane. It was faster than the Corvette, it was faster than the Camaro, faster than the Mustang. And then the other car that also had that power plant was, I believe it was the 1988 or 89 Pontiac Trans Am GTA. That car was amazing. Tons of buttons on the steering wheel, really fun. Really neat seats. I love that car. It had the T-tops. And the wheels were super cool, super 80s. They were kind of like BBS style wheels, like kind of mesh, and they were gold. And that car was just so awesome, like kind of a pearl white paint, like tan leather interior, and those gold mesh wheels. Oh, 80s heaven. Love it. I know my dude Jeremy knows what I'm talking about. And I'm sure a lot of you remember that car as well. Okay. With all that said, I think I'm going to end the video now. 26 minutes. I was just going to do like 12 minutes. But here I am. So, have a wonderful day, or night, or morning, whatever. And I will see you in the next one. Like, share, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Bye!